In this video, I'm going to show you how I created this pendant using not soldering, but welding. Now first, I'm going to start off by forming this in the hydraulic press. Before I can start that, I need to make certain that the dies that I use are prepared properly for this. So to begin, I'm going to kind of clean off the surface. This is going to ensure that I have a good clean surface for my materials that I'm using, and also that they don't just pop through when I use the hydraulic press. So now that the surface is done, I need to address that sharp edge that is on the inside of this die. So I hit this with a file and I'm just breaking off those very, very sharp corners. Then once I have that done with the file, I'm going to move then to kind of some sanding wheels, and I'm going to clean up the inside of this. Now I'm not going to take this all the way down to a nice clean finish, and I'm not even going to remove every surface imperfection inside of the die, but I am going to remove anything that sticks out and protrudes that might affect this piece that I'm working on as I'm working with it. Now that this is done, I'm going to layer everything up, put it into my hydraulic press, release, and now we have our piece. In this case, I formed this to about 2,400 pounds PSI. In this case, I've drawn my design and now I'm going to engrave this. I do this with a GRS engraving machine. Some people like to use other machines, and that's okay. The cut that I'm using for this is called a flare cut, and that just means that I make two different cuts to create kind of a very shiny peak on the piece itself. Once I have this done, I'm going to go back to the hydraulic press and also form it. Now this is a little bit more precarious of a situation because it very easily could pop through or move, which would be detrimental. However, in this case, it turned out great. So next thing I need to do is cut out the inside of this. I wish I could saw that fast, but I don't. But I wanted to saw around this, and you'll notice that I'm not going all the way down to that engraved line. And I did that on purpose so that then I could come back with a set of files and kind of clean that up. So here you'll see that process. And I just want to smooth out any of those rough, imperfected edges that just happen while you're doing sawing. Some people might be really good at it, but I have to hit it with a file. In addition, I pull in a sanding stick to help out with that and just kind of smooth everything out. Working back on our silver piece, I'm going to solder a bezel into place, and this is going to hold a stone for me. In this case, I'm going to be placing a faceted labradorite cabochon. Oh, look at that silver solder flow, and I just watch for that ring to go all the way around beautifully. Now to pickle and get it ready. Here I have also engraved a bale, and this is going to be cut out and formed, and then I'll place this onto my piece here in just a little bit. Once more, I'm going to saw out another piece. In this case, I'm sawing out the outside of my copper piece. I need to clean up all of those edges, make sure they're nice and smooth. And I also want to sand a flat spot onto the back of this, because when I put it together with the silver, and here we're just testing it, when I put it together with the silver, I want them to have a really good matched fit finish. So I'm also going to do the same thing to the silver. Notice that I've got some blue tape there. That just helps me to hold on to the piece as I move it around. This is looking really good, test fitting that, making sure that everything lines up nice and neat. So next thing I need to do is I'm going to set my stone. I want to do this before I put that copper top on because my stone is too big to be able to do it. Notice that I kind of work from side to side. So I work opposite sides of the stone to set this bezel down. Now here I'm doing this with an engraving machine, but I could easily have done it by hand, or I could use a hammer and punch system. That gray putty stuff that's holding this down, that's Thermalock from GRS. Oh, look how pretty that is. Everything is nice and seated, and we have a beautiful fit and finish on our piece. So now we're ready to try again, putting that copper top on, just to make sure everything fits and lines up beautifully. And it's looking really good at this point. Here I'm going to use my Orion 200i welder. Now, I could not solder this together because we had a stone in there. Well, I couldn't set the stone afterwards because of the design. So I took the time and I figured out what weld setting I need, and then I can come in and just go along the seam of my piece. Every now and then there might be a little hole, so I have to go back and touch that up. Here I'm using a fiberglass brush to kind of clean up any of that soot that is here. So there is not oxidation like you would get with soldering. Then I'm going to use the welder and go along all 3 sides of this particular pendant and just make sure everything is put together nice and tight. This is creating a very, very strong join. It's basically taking both sides and fusing them together. It melts them so that they become one piece. There is a learning curve to this on the arc welder, but once you have it down, it does allow you to do things like this and create a pendant without having to solder it. Yes, I soldered on the bezel, but the rest of this pendant is 100% welded, which is kind of cool. Now you'll notice that there is some soot here, and then also the surface texture is kind of bumpy. So it doesn't create that beautiful smooth texture or finish that you would expect with soldering. So there is going to be a little bit of finish work. So here again, I'm just removing some of that little bit of surface oxidation, as well as the soot that happens from that welder. Oh, looking really good there. Next thing I need to do is address my bale. My bale is really, really strong. It's 20 gauge silver and very, very hard. So I'm using here my Durston Tools ring bender to get that started around. And then I use a dead blow nylon hammer just to kind of close that bale back up. Here you can see it's all closed. I've left a little tab so that I can bring this in and weld it into place. So I do one little tack weld, double check, make sure everything looks good, do another tack, and then I go ahead and go in for the whole full weld. This is going to create a very secure connection on my bale. Plus, I can then use those welds to blend it in so that they flow into one piece rather than looking like something I have just soldered onto it or attached onto a little stem. Again, not everything will be perfect with the welding, so I will have some cleanup to do. Occasionally, I will give this bale a little bit of a bend and a twist just to make sure everything is nice and tight. If you don't have a good weld, it's going to tell you pretty quickly if you try to give that some pressure. So there, everything is looking good. It's a little bit bumpy, so now I'm going to come back in with a Muir's disc. In this case, it's a pretty fine one. It's nice and soft, and it allows me to come in and just blend each of those weld points together. Now that those are sanded, I'm going to do some more finishing with a silicone wheel. In this case, it's a light blue. It's very, very fine and pre-polished on that. So I'm going to do that all around the edges, and then also inside of the bale, I have another one. However, this one didn't get quite where I needed to get, so I switched to a different shape. That is one of the best benefits of some of these different accessories for the flex shaft and the micromotors, is that you can alter their shape to get into whatever you need to do. Finally, I'm going to add a polish. Here I'm using some of the platinum white that comes from Fordham. However, you can use any of your favorite polishing accessories and compounds to get whichever finish you want. In this case, I'm not after a super high polish. Matter of fact, you'll see I'm going to come back in with another accessory and kind of bring that polish down. So this is called a fret eraser. It's meant for people who work on frets, which are for your guitars and other string instruments. So that is what I use here, just to create a very, very subtle sanded finish on the outside of this copper. I leave the silver completely polished. And now we have our piece completely finished. You'll notice that those weld joints don't look like weld joints at all. You can clean those up completely, assuming that you have a nice, strong, solid join. And as you are filing and cleaning this up, you'll see if you have any holes, and then you can go back and alter or fix those. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this process video. If you have any questions, drop those down in the comment section and I'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you guys next time.